a neat blend of a new market and a massive market for us, especially expanding into an international footprint, as well as an opportunity to celebrate our history and our roots at Bowman Gray.
It's definitely a different feeling, right? If you were to get fired versus just the team shutting down, and it'd probably be a little bit more uncharted territory for me, but I got to experience it in the Truck Series.
That's about 3 coins flipping at the same time. If you held me down and say, okay, you got to name one, I would probably say.
You never know when you're just going to have an off weekend.
I've kind of gotten the ability to have the platform that I want, and it is my platform, and I can speak to whatever I feel like talking about.
We were in the mix, and it makes it a lot more fun when you're in the mix than you are just struggling and trying to figure out what direction to go.
Yeah, it's tough, and sorry for being bouncy, the roads here.
It's like if you have, the all-you-can-eat buffet every single day of the week, people are going to get tired of it, right? So if it's a special thing, I think people get more excited for it.
Hi, Bo! Raise your hand up so she can see it. There you go.
And truthfully, even as a company, I think it was, very head-scratching why at the beginning all 4 of us just went instantly straight to the back. We just really struggled.
Welcome on to the Backstretch. I'm News 5's Heather Williams. Okay, Harrison Burton, now I see it now. The last place driver in the regular season point standings won the race at Daytona and is now playoff eligible. This is akin to March Madness, right? This is their Cinderella run through the conference tournament. It's not the championship tournament. It's not quite, UMBC beating Virginia, but it is a team as an 8 seed running through their conference championship and getting into the big dance. It's incredible. I know a lot of people are really frustrated by this. I know if I was a Bubba Wallace fan or a Ross Chastain fan or a Chris Buescher fan or even a Kyle Busch fan, I might be like, wait a minute, my drivers had a way better season than Harrison Burton. But this is what makes it exciting. This is what makes you tune in because you never truly know what's going to happen, especially at a place like Daytona. Harrison Burton is a good driver. He won in the Xfinity Series. He probably came to the Cup Series a little too early, but the kid can drive. Now he's proved it. He's won a race. What's going to happen to him next year? We don't know. He doesn't have a ride for next year, but for this year, he's proved it. He got the 100th win for the Wood Brothers. Do you know how long they've been trying to get 100 wins and how many drivers they've been through before they finally got to 100 wins? I mean, it's incredible. It's very cool. It's a great storyline. I can't wait to talk about that with Chris coming up. Now, on the flip side of that, if you are a driver on the outside looking in, if you are Bubba Wallace, if you are Kyle Busch or Ross Chastain, or my guest this week, Chase Briscoe, that was the last thing you wanted to see, was to see one of those last spots snatched by somebody not with your name across the front of their chest. So one of the many things I'm going to talk to you about with Chase Briscoe, also just talking to him about how to keep things going at Stewart Haas Racing when the end is near. They have 11 races left, but obviously they want to go out with a bang. They still want to make the playoffs. They still have a lot to do before the end comes, but how do you keep that motivation up when you know there's nothing left? And how is this different from being fired? Because they weren't fired. The organization just went away. If the organization's still there, Chase Briscoe is definitely still in the 14 next year. So interesting conversation with Chase. We will talk to him about that as well. And my final thought will be about the NASCAR schedule that was released on Thursday and the change to the schedule and kind of my thoughts about 2025. So lots to get to. Let's do it. We are joined, as always, by our crew chief, Chris Carrier, who also is the crew chief of the number 75 Food Country Truck here at Henderson Racing. We are actually in Abingdon today. Thanks for having us out here today, Chris.
Thank you.
Let's get right to it. A spot in the playoffs. Stolen right out of the hands of Ross Chastain and Bubba Wallace, potentially, by Harrison Burton. First of all, let's just talk about Harrison, because, I mean, what a great moment for him, his dad, great kid, probably ended up in the Cup Series a little too early, but just talk about finally getting a win when he's on his way out at the Wood Brothers.
Well, I mean, it had to be a surreal set of circumstances for him. You know, he's been there, and yeah, I think most people, common knowledge would say, you know, Harrison jumped in there too quick, but I heard somebody talking about an interview he did. It's like he realizes it and probably knows it, but he's like, what are you going to do? You're going to tell Roger Penske no,
Right.
you know, and not drive for the Wood Brothers, the most iconic NASCAR team, one of them anyway, that in the history. So, you know, the young man jumped in there and did the best he could. I'm sure there's, you know, a lot of times he would think back and say, well, I wish I'd have done this different or approached this different or whatever. But he just kept going, kept on keeping on, and, you know, lo and behold, his chance came on Saturday night at Daytona, and he played his cards right. He kept his nose clean. He was not in one of the big wrecks. He didn't get destroyed. He maneuvered through a lot of fracas going on all around him, and he beat one of the greatest drivers in the history of NASCAR racing. One-on-one, basically. A little bit of help from a couple others, but he used those other people. He used the guy pushing him. He played it out perfectly. I mean, he played his cards perfectly. He ended up in victory lane for the Wood Brothers, which to me is, I love Eddie Wood and Lynn. Eddie's a good friend of mine. I texted him right after the race. He's good man. And, you know, Harrison's a good young man. He's a great, I used to say great kid. He's not a kid anymore. But, you know, for him,
he's still a kid.
Yeah, he's still a kid. He's more of a kid than me, that's for sure. But anyway, great time for him. And you know, I guess you hear a lot of this way, that way about the playoffs. Well, he shouldn't be in there. You know what? He's in there because that's what the rules are.
Well,
That's what they are.
I did want to ask you about that, though.
Yeah.
Is there a flaw in the rules that a guy that's basically last in points, and even after the win is still last in points of the full-time charters, getting in the playoffs? I mean, that can't really happen. I guess March Madness is really the only other sporting event where that can happen.
It could. I agree with you some. Is it a flaw? Is it something that maybe we need to look at and say, okay, how can we not let this happen? Maybe. I don't disagree with it. I don't want to take anything away from Harrison's win, but let's face it. Even if it didn't get him in the playoffs, a win at Daytona on his way out is huge.
Not taking anything away from him. We were having this same conversation, or would have had this same conversation if the win for Austin Dillon stood.
That's right.
It's the same.
That's right.
It's the same
That's right.
conversation. So I don't know that this conversation is against Harrison so much as it's just. Is the system flawed? Well,
I think maybe there could, you know, you could stand back and they could figure out ways to say, now wait a minute, you know, you got to be so far up in the points. You have to have a certain degree of success to be able to jump your way into the playoffs, even if you do win a race. Now, what if he wins a second one? Then I don't care where he is in the points. If he wins the second one, it's like, okay, we got to let him in. I don't know all the answers, Heather. I mean, let's face it. This point system was way different than what we were used to for years and years and years, and they changed it out to make it more of a unpredictable result.
Right.
And I think they really had March Madness in mind. I think they really did. You know, like, okay, we want a playoff system to where, you know, 5, 6, 8, or even 3 races from the end, from the last race, we don't want 99% of the people knowing who's going to win the championship. We want it to go down to the wire, and we want it to be, oh my gosh, this is one of those moments that, you know, we're never going to forget. We didn't predict this. We didn't see it coming. Okay, you know, Harrison getting in, we didn't see that coming. You know, we're all happy about it. But, you know, now they got, a couple of races left. Darlington. One race. Darlington. They got Darlington, the Southern 500, so that leaves guys like Bubba Wallace and Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain. That they got to do one thing. They got to go win at the toughest track there is.
So let me ask you 2 questions along those lines.
Okay.
Of the 3 guys that can point their way in going to Darlington, which would be Buescher. This is a working race shop, guys. So
yeah.
Buescher, Bubba, and Ross. Who do you like of those 3 that can get in on points?
I'd probably have to say because of his consistency. Man, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's a tough. That's about 3 coins flipping at the same time. If you held me down and say, okay, you got to name one, I would probably say Buescher, because of his performance at Darlington has been really well. Man, you can make an argument for all 3.
Bubba finished, I think, top 5.
He did, and I think Bubba is due for some. Let's face it, Bubba's due for some good things to happen to him. Some good luck. Some being able to close out good runs. They've had speed in that car at quite a few races this year. Some they haven't. You can say that for the other 2 also. Ross has been kind of up and down. We keep wanting to see great performance from him, and you see glimpses of it. You see flashes of it. And then it's like, oh, what happened? He runs a couple weeks and doesn't have very good speed or very good finishes. So I don't. If you were choking me and said, okay, you got to name somebody, you got to name the one, and if it's not right, I'm just going to let you die. I would say probably I would go with Buescher. She would never do that. She might to you or somebody. I would say Chris Buescher would be my favorite. I would also say if there's somebody going to win a race out of those 3,
or out of those 3, or add Kyle Busch, Todd Gilliland, and who else is back there kind of lurking? Well, maybe those 5.
Well,
or Michael McDowell's another one that's lurking right there.
Man, that's 6 drivers that, you know what, they all could do that. Right. And now we're talking about the flaws of the point system. Now we're talking about one of the really good things of the point system. Like we come down to the last race, it's the Southern 500 at Darlington, the most iconic race probably in the world to stock car people, and the hardest to win, but yet the most enjoyable to win. You've got those 6 guys you just named that you could make an argument like, you know what, they could go win this race. And those guys right now, they're back at their shop. They're pouring through all the information. They're going over those cars, needle and thread, every little detail. They're trying to get every little bit of speed. I promise you they're trying to figure out, okay, we're in the gray areas. This table's gray, in the gray areas of the rules. What can we push to this outer edge right here to get the most? What can we get away with? What can we get away with? What can we do to give ourselves an advantage on this? Because, now, especially for those guys and everybody else that's not in the playoffs, it's the most important race they've run all year. Yeah. Period.
Some of them maybe of their career.
Yeah. And those people are putting all the money they spend, all the time they spend, all the effort. They're putting all that in, and like, okay, they're bearing down to say, okay, if we don't get in this week, if we don't have a good run, or maybe if we don't win the race, our season's not over. But the big cake that we've been chasing, the big prize, the big trophy that we want to be a part of chasing, the door's closed on that. Right. So now we close out the year just running races. That to me, that's a good part. To me, it's going to make that Southern 500 at Darlington Sunday night, I think the race is, but it's going to make it even more exciting.
Well, and another twist, there are really 2 for sure, maybe 3 drivers, technically 3, that can still win the regular season championship. Mm-hmm. You have Tyler Reddick, who's leading the points. I think 17 points back is Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott. Those 3 still have a chance. Who do you like of those 3?
Well, I kind of like, because of his hot streak and the way he's been running and the way he ran at Darlington in the spring, I like Tyler Reddick. I think he's going to go down there. I think he's going to have a very solid race. I think he's going to run up front. He's qualified up front, run up front through the night. He's going to put himself in a position to take the win. And I think there's going to be probably 5 or 6 guys that's going to be neck and neck, beat and bang, pit strategy, tire strategy, trying to make the right adjustments on their cars for their, for that last, say, 30-lap run or whatever it is, I'm going to say the last 25% of the race to be the best car at that time, and that's going to be some critical decisions. I'm going to go with Tyler Reddick there, but I said it last week, and I'm going to say it again. The guy that's the most intriguing to watch. I'm not saying he's going to be the guy to do it, but to me, the most intriguing to watch, because we've all been waiting for him to become the real driver that he really is all year long, and hadn't happened, is Kyle Busch. He was this close last week. Yeah. Harrison Burton did a phenomenal job of holding him off. I mean, he looked like Richard Petty or somebody running Daytona, or David Pearson in that 21 car winning at Daytona. So Kyle is right there. He's had 3 weeks now, I think, of some really solid runs, being pretty competitive. Maybe those juices are flowing. They're another team that's back at their shop right now thinking we got to think of everything we can do. And he's capable of winning that race. The talent is there, the experience, the abilities, the knowledge. He is capable of winning the race if they can get their stuff together and have a fast car and keep their pit strategy and everything together. He's going to be there at the end, knocking on that door. So, man, I tell you, this is, to me, you say Southern 500 at Darlington, it just lights me up. I know for a fact that 90% of drivers in that garage area, if you said you can win one race your entire career, one race this year, what would it be? And I think 90% of them would say, down deep, I really want to win the Southern 500 because it's the hardest. It's the most difficult. It takes more.
I think it's 1A to Daytona.
Well, and true, Daytona 500 is, again, I almost put that aside,
Gotcha.
Only because of the, what do you call it, like the fanfare.
Right.
And it's just huge, but it's not as hard to win as the Southern 500 as a driver. The driver has, I think, 90% to do with it at Darlington. Now, you got to have a good car. I don't want to discount what the teams do, the crew chiefs do, and the race engineers and everybody, the pit crew. But once you get to that point, to conquer that speedway, as hard as it is, just to run the race without hitting something, without hitting a wall, much less try to beat everybody else. I think drivers in their heart know that, man, if I do that, I think I've made it. I think I'm at least pretty good. And to think of guys that won it multiple times, like David Pearson, it's just hard for me to fathom. It's hard for me to say, I'm sure that a lot of people will be proud. But there again, we're going to Darlington. It's the last race before the playoffs. There's going to be a lot of drama. It's going to be very intense. I think you're going to see. I think you're going to see the good part of the playoffs reap the benefits here.
Well, this is really a playoff race. It's not this year because of the Olympics, but it will be next year, and it's a playoff race. Sorry, one last thing I wanted to ask you about.
Okay.
The Denny Hamlin penalty, because we did not get a chance to talk about that last week. I hate to even call it the Denny Hamlin penalty because he really didn't have anything to do with Denny Hamlin. No. It had to do with Toyota Racing engines and them unsealing the engine before NASCAR got a chance to inspect it based on the Bristol win. I understand the letter of the law and the fact that obviously they had to punish them, but it took. I guess I don't understand, and maybe you could explain why the driver's points had to be a part of it, because it took Denny out of the driver's championship for something Denny didn't do. The owner's points, the fines, all of that I get, but Denny didn't touch the engine. He didn't see the engine. He didn't unseal the engine. He had anything to do with that. I guess that's where the disconnect is for me. I
don't. I'll be honest with you, Heather. It kind of confused me a little bit. I know the intent of that whole program, because we have the same thing in the truck series. The intent is it's at cost cutting. It's aimed at cost cutting to where you can only use so many engines. You have to use engines that are not rebuilt. And when they seal the engines, they know that until those seals are broken, that engine has not been rebuilt or freshened or messed with or whatever. I can't imagine that all the engine builders, all the manufacturers, everybody involved doesn't do all they can do to communicate with NASCAR and just make sure that everybody's on the same page. And I don't know, I think this is probably maybe a goof up a little bit. I don't know how to say it any better than that. I think it puts a mark on Denny. Well, like you say, he didn't have anything to do with this. And I don't know. It's a little bit murky to me. And the fact that this was the Bristol race in the spring, and here we are in September, and I don't know. I don't know. I'm just a little bit confused on this one, and I just don't know how to comment on it. I just to me, it's like, really?
Well, it's the letter of the law, but not the
it
intent.
is.
Not
it
the
is.
intent of the law.
It's not the intent of the law. That's it. It's not the intent of the law. It is the letter of the law. NASCAR was probably put in a little bit of a no-win situation here, caught between a rock and a hard place, so to speak. I know the people with TRD took complete responsibility for it, apologized for it, so on and so forth, and that's all good. I think that's what that's exactly what they needed to do to kind of clear the air, to make sure that Joe Gibbs, Denny Hamlin, the crew chief, the race engineer, or whoever, the guy that answers the phone at their place, didn't have anything to do with this, and they weren't really, it didn't fall on them. But it's kind of, I don't know, to affect points at this stage of the game. I don't know, just a little bit murky to me. And I think an average fan too is probably looking at like, what, and I don't know. I guess maybe, hopefully. It will, things will come out, but everybody will realize, okay, we just got to communicate better, and we got to be more open, and so on and so forth, and maybe cross those details a little bit. But man, we're looking for a lot here.
Chase, thanks for joining us. I know this is a big weekend for you guys. It's like you and 20 so guys. This is your one shot to try to get into the playoffs. How do you feel going into Darlington?
Yeah, obviously this is our last shot to get into the playoffs, and truthfully, it's, I would say, a top 5 racetrack for us as far as just the team goes and everything else. We've always had pretty good speed. Every time we go there, we're kind of a 10th place to 5th place car. So if we can make it a little bit better, I feel like we could certainly be in the mix. So yeah, I'm excited to go to Darlington. That's a place where, at least from the driver's standpoint, you feel like you have a lot of control. You feel like you can kind of determine some of your own destiny and things like that. So, yeah, have a lot of confidence every time I go there, on the personal side, but also our team's been really good there. So hopefully we can go there and upset some people.
So I know, like, in one sense, when something happens like it did last week, where a guy just totally from out of left field comes in and wins and steals a playoff spot, for lack of a better term, it's disappointing, but does it also give hope to everybody else that, like, well, I mean, this just goes to prove any of us on any given day can win a race?
Yeah, I mean, I for sure think it's a good reminder, no matter how bad your season is going, that there's always a way that you can still find yourself in the playoffs. So, whenever we see things like that, it definitely gives you that reminder that, your whole season can be turned around in one race, just with, the format and things that we run in now. So certainly, yeah, I mean, I think so. I think, going back to your question, it definitely is a reminder that, anything can happen in this sport. You never know who's going to win on any given Sunday. Obviously there's a little more chance of that at a place like a Daytona or Talladega, but it still happens at other racetracks too. So, hopefully we can be that guy this weekend.
I guess now 11 races left at Stewart Haas. I know this is kind of emotional for you. I mean, I remember when you got hired to drive for Tony. I mean, that was your hero, and this was all exciting. This is kind of winding to an end. What'll be your takeaways? What will you remember about your time at Stewart Haas?
Yeah, I think just the people, honestly, that I've gotten to know so well. Right, I've been here for 7 years now. So, a lot of people have obviously come and go, but there's still that kind of core Stewart Haas group of people that, it's all I've known really for almost all my career outside of, 1 or 2 years. So, just the friendships that I've built, people that, I'll always, consider a friend. And, just there's a lot of amazing people here, and it's something that I'll certainly never forget. I've been very fortunate to be at the same place for 7 years. There's a lot of drivers that are only at a place for 2 or 3 years at a time, and you never get to really have that personal connection side. And um, it's something for me that I've been really fortunate to have here is just getting to know everybody and being a part of the Stewart Haas family. So yeah, I'm gonna miss that. Just knowing that I'm not gonna get a race with these people anymore, and I'm not gonna see them on a week to week basis and things like that. It'll certainly be tough, but at the same time, I obviously have a great opportunity too going forward next year. So there's gonna be amazing people over there too. It's just it's tough when this is kind of all you've known for the last 7 years, and it's coming to an end.
You mentioned the people. You can tell on social media that at least the drivers, you guys seem to get along. I mean, some of your social media posts are so funny. Specifically ones with you and Noah, him going through your fridge and you guys playing video games. I mean, it seems like you guys, the drivers are all really close. I'm assuming that's kind of disappointed that's coming to an end.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that as a race car driver, you're always going to have teammates, right? And you hope that you're going to get along with your teammates. And that's certainly something, this year, at least with the addition of Noah and Josh, has been a lot of fun just to get to know those guys better. And, we're all at the same point of our careers where, we're all, relatively don't have a huge resume to show, like, it's not like one of us has 30 cup wins and one of us has one cup win and vice versa. We're all kind of at the same spot as far as our career goes. And then, on the personal side, we're all a little bit different, just from a family structure and things like that. Josh and myself and Ryan are married and have kids. Then you have Noah that's kind of the opposite of that. But yeah, we all get along great, and that's something that's been a lot of fun this year. And it was incredible for me to be able to be teammates with, Kevin Harvick and Eric Almirola and guys like that. But it has been different, this year, just having guys that are all relatively the same as me in our career. And it's been fun just to kind of all bounce ideas off each other. And I feel like we've worked really, really well together. And, I'm assuming it'll be the same way over at Gibbs, but you never really know until you get over there. So, yeah, it's definitely been something I've enjoyed, just getting to know those guys better, and will be guys that I for sure will continue a friendship with.
So a lot of times when guys are kind of wrapping up their season with a team they're not coming back from, it's like a lame duck situation. But this doesn't really feel like a lame duck because it's not like you were fired or asked not to come back. I mean, the organization's going away. I know I've worked for TV stations that closed their doors, and it wasn't the same as getting fired because if they're around, you'd still be around. So how does it feel for you? What is this last 11 weeks like? What does it feel like from a competition standpoint?
Yeah, it's definitely a different feeling, right? If you were to get fired versus just the team shutting down, and it'd probably be a little bit more uncharted territory for me, but I got to experience it in the Truck Series. I want to say it was in around July or August where Brad Keselowski Racing told us that they were going to shut the doors at the end of the season. So we had to still finish out that entire season knowing that we were going to shut down at the end of the year, and it's been really, really similar, honestly, to that. Just the mentality that all of our people have kind of continued to go with, knowing that if we're running up front and, battling for race wins or winning races, it's going to be easier to find stuff. And, now we're all to the point where we've all pretty much found something, but we still have a lot to prove. And yeah, hopefully it'll be the same as BKR was. We were able to win our last race as a company at Homestead. Hopefully we can go do that at Phoenix with Stewart Haas.
So what do you have to do to get there? Like, what's the key to being successful at Darlington?
Yeah, Darlington, it takes obviously a good race car, but you have to do almost everything perfect. 500 miles around there, there's a lot of opportunity to make mistakes. Obviously you're going to be right on the wall for a lot of those 500 miles. So just trying to be as sharp as you can. And, that track's a track that really challenges you as a race car driver, especially the Southern 500, just with, the mental side of things, the physical side. It's going to be, 95 plus degrees, I think, this weekend. So it's going to be really hot. So, it takes the whole package when you go to Darlington. If you're going to win, you have to have a really good team that brings you a really good race car. As a driver, you have to be on it. Your pit crew has to be extremely good with the amount of pit stops you're going to do. So it's really a full, complete team win when you go to Darlington and perform. And it's a team everywhere you go, but there's certain racetracks where it takes a little bit more of the whole puzzle. And certainly Darlington, I think, is at the top of the list with that.
So for my final thought today, let's talk about the NASCAR schedule that was released. on Thursday. I hear a lot of NASCAR fans complain a lot about how NASCAR has forgotten its roots. Now, I don't ever think that was the case. I think it's very important if the sport wants to move forward, if it wants to continue to even try to be in the same conversation as baseball or hockey or soccer, it's going to have to reach more fans, more people than just fans in the Southeast. So I think it was very important for them to go to LA for the Clash. I think it's very important to race on the streets of Chicago. That is important to the sport. But NASCAR fans that have complained that NASCAR doesn't care about its roots, I don't think you get to complain anymore. We have, in the last 3 years, returned North Wilkesboro. We're going to Bowman Gray, and now Rockingham is back on the schedule for the trucks in the Xfinity Series. You want NASCAR history, you want traditional NASCAR tracks, by goodness, you got it now. You got exactly what you asked for. Now it's going to be incumbent on the race fans to show up to these tracks, to pack these things out, to give NASCAR a reason to come back. A lot of fans were complaining about Richmond losing a race. Richmond's kind of a historical track in NASCAR. It's got a ton of history there for sure. It's not maybe North Wilkesboro or Bristol or one of those tracks, but there's a ton of history at Richmond. We're only getting one race date at Richmond. Why? Because fans stopped showing up. So if you want these old tracks to stay on the schedule, you got to show up. I know it's a lot of pressure on the people in the Carolinas, right? Because now you and Virginia, in that area right there where NASCAR kind of got its start, where its core is, because now you have Charlotte, North Wilkesboro, Rockingham, Bristol, Martinsville, Richmond, all within that area. And that's the fan base that's going to have to provide most of the crowd, the same fan base. Sure, people make Bristol or North Wilkesboro or whatever a destination, but you ask for this, NASCAR fans, now you have to put your money where your mouth is. You have to show up to these races, pack them out, and prove that NASCAR was right in bringing you back to life. It'll be interesting to see. I'm excited about this schedule. It's got a little bit of everything. I love going international. I love going to Mexico and bringing the racing to fans that have never had it before. I think the only thing that's really missing is there's no Southern California stop. We're still going to Sonoma, but there's no Southern California stop. And I think there's a lot of race fans there that would really like to have NASCAR there. Ben Kennedy talked about when he met with the media after the schedule was released that they're still working on the Fontana project. We'll see if that ever comes to light. But I think we need racing in that part of the country. So if I was going to say there was one thing missing on the schedule for me, that would be it. But the trucks are going to Connecticut. Like, there's just a ton going on here, hopefully to appease and satisfy new fans and old race fans. And I love that NASCAR is at least trying to find that balance. Thanks for joining us on the Backstretch. We'll see you next week.